Hello, I'm Stuart Bowes, and this is the Net Hero podcast. Thank you so much for supporting us over the years. And if you've not come across our channel before, let me tell you what we do. The Net Hero podcast is part of FutureNetZero.com, a platform which believes that better business makes a better planet. We're all about people doing things that enable the planet to become more sustainable. That means reducing emissions, that means creating new things and products that we can all live and survive with, because at the end of the day, we can't hold back our development. We want a better planet, and I believe that business is the way for us to get that, by providing us products and services that have a lower carbon profile. And they're the kind of stories that we will be promoting on this channel. If you've seen and listened to our podcast before, you'll know that we've talked to scientists, academics, business people, but we're happy to talk to anyone who's trying to do their bit to make things different. And now, on to this week's episode. Welcome to this episode of the Net Hero podcast, all about air pollution. In fact, it's one of these things that's been kind of overseeing many parts of kind of the net zero narrative. What it is that makes it quite clear that we're screwing up the planet. One of the easiest things to do that is to see it. And we can see air pollution, we can see smog, we can feel it. And it's one of those things that has been getting more and more important over the years as populations increase, as societies change. My own family are from India, and India's levels of air pollution have exponentially risen as India has modernized. Well, today I'm joined by Anna, I'm going to hopefully get this right, Dworakowska, sorry, from Polish Smog Alert. Anna, your Polish Smog Alert has been nominated for an Earthshot Prize, so many congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Indeed, this year we were one of the three nominees for the Earthshot Prize in the air quality category. And of course, it's a great honor and great pleasure for us. And it's also a recognition of the hard work that we've been doing. And all of the volunteers of Polish Smog Alert have been doing for the past 10 years to clean the air in Poland.
Let's talk about that. So it has been going a while, like you said, 10 years. Is it a charity? Can you explain to the listeners and viewers, were you set up by an institution? Is it funded by the state? What's the background?
We started as a local grassroots organization, so a non-governmental, non-for-profit organization. And we started 10 years ago in the city of Krakow, where I personally live as well, which at that time was one of the most polluted cities in Europe. And as citizens living there, some of us actually working on environment as environmental economists or activists in NGOs or scientists, we decided to join our forces and try to change it and try to do something about it. So this was over 10 years ago, in 2012. At that time, really, you could choke on Krakow's air. The levels of pollution, they were very high.
Give me an experience walking down the street. Would you see it? Would it be like a haze? And how did you feel?
Yeah, this was a haze with a very nasty smell, basically, because the main problem at that time, but still in Poland, the main source of dust pollution, that is particulate matter, was the burning of coal, burning of wood, and also sometimes, unfortunately, waste. So at that time, we had only in Krakow 30,000 stoves, boilers, burning coal in the city. That was the main problem. But the authorities, basically did not do anything about it, because as you can imagine, 30,000 households being heated like that, this is a huge problem to address. And although different documents like the air quality plan said that in order to clean the air in Krakow, at least to some point, we need to ban the use of coal and wood in the city, because the Krakow is located in a valley, so we don't have much winds. And this is why we really need to cut down on emissions. But at the same time, the same document would say that it's impossible because of social and economic reasons. So with our campaign, we tried to convince the decision makers that it is possible. And very soon, the issue of Krakow's air, which, as I said, at that time, although it was one of the most polluted cities in Europe, no one knew about it.
Yeah,
So when
absolutely.
that was shocking, and it was also a shock for us because we also lived so many years in that city and we didn't know about it. But once we kind of discovered the data, we started showing it to people. And the media got really interested. We were joined by scientists, joined by doctors, joined by normal, ordinary people, thousands of them going on protest marches, thousands of articles in the media. And after 1 year of that campaign, we were finally joined by the politicians, and they voted the ban.
They saw the pressure, they could feel
Yes,
it.
they saw the pressure on the streets, directly under the doors of their offices, and they voted in favor of the ban of coal, and later on the ban of wood as well.
I want to take you back because I want to talk about how you've done things and cleaned up, which is brilliant. But let's just go back. Have you lived in Poland all your life?
Yes. I lived in Poland all my life. However, I was born in northeastern Poland,
Right.
which is, close to the border with Lithuania, Belarus. There is this beautiful Białowieża forest.
Clean air.
Yes, and a lot of clean air. And then I ended up in Krakow. So but it was many years ago, over 20 years ago.
Let's go back a little bit further. Pre the breakdown of communism, see, we have very little knowledge of what things were like. Now, we'd assume that there was obviously here as well in the UK lots of coal power back in the 80s and early 90s. Was there an effect of, as Poland opened up, as it started to industrialize more, that the level of pollution increased, or has it always been the same? I just wanted to get an idea for our listeners of whether this is part of the consequence of economic growth, which is one of the things a lot of people say.
Not really, actually. It's
Right.
the other way around, because we used to have a lot of pollution from the industry, from heavy industry, which during the communist times was, the basis of the communist economy. However, in the free market, this industry, as it was really ineffective, was unable to survive at that level. Because, the free market meant a lot of state subsidies basically were gone. So a lot of actually heavy industry either shut down or decreased its production.
So you're talking about things like steel making and cement, all of that.
Yeah, we still have a steel making. Yeah, but
Right.
then when we joined the EU, we also had to implement all the regulations, for example, from the Industrial Emissions Directive, which also means that the pollution from the industry went down. It doesn't mean it's not a problem. However, it's
Right.
not the main contributor. The main contributor in Poland is, as I said, the household sector. So the burning of coal and wood in sometimes very, very polluting boilers. We call them smokers because they emit really a lot of smoke. Like you go walk through little villages or towns and you can see like every other house spewing
Wow.
crazy amounts of smoke of different colors.
It really sounds like London in the 1950s and 60s.
Yes, it
Every
does.
house had a coal fire and it's coming up the chimney.
Yes. So basically households, burning of coal and wood in households is responsible for like 80% of particulate matter emissions. So it's the main source. Yeah.
Yeah, your actual issue is the heating of houses.
Yeah.
It's not so much industry and it's not so much diesel vehicles or traffic.
Diesel vehicles are a problem, but in the city, and it is also being addressed right now. For example, Krakow voted the first in Poland low emission zone. It's not so ambitious as in London, but given the differences in economic, let's say, levels, it is an important piece of legislation. And right now, Warsaw is doing the same. So this issue is also being addressed. Yeah.
So let's move forward, and thank you for that context. It gives, I think, it gives us a real picture of what the problems are. So I'm sitting in my house in Krakow, and I've been burning coal and wood all my life, and it keeps my house and my family warm. Suddenly, I get it. You have this movement that says to the politicians, "You've got to clean it up." How did they address that? Because that's a very difficult thing to say to people. Stop burning this. What was the alternative? How did things start to change?
Yeah, this was also very important for us. We didn't want to leave these 30,000 households, which means around 100,000 people,
Yeah.
alone, basically. And we also put pressure on politicians to make sure that there are support programs in place. And there were two important support programs. One was a subsidy program for you to actually install a new heating system that will not pollute the air so much. And the other program was for the poor. It was a heating allowance. So if you gave up
Fine.
coal, which at that time was the cheapest source of heating, right now it's not because, of the energy crisis, coal prices went up. But at that time it was the cheapest source of heating. So the poor, if they decided to give up coal, well, they had to do it anyway, right? They were paid an annual heating allowance to help them cover the costs of heating.
And what was the alternative fuel source they went to then? What did you do?
The alternative fuel source, well, we're in the city, so a lot of people could switch to district heating.
Right.
The other source was, of course, gas heating and of course heat pumps. Right now heat pumps are the first choice, but it was 10 years ago,
Wow.
so they were not so popular at that time. But right now, when we look at in Poland in general, when people change from coal, like 60% of them go for a heat pump.
Wow. I mean, that is incredible. And that's really interesting because we're
Yeah.
facing that dilemma in the UK, which is how do we, get rid of, decarbonize heat? And we have gas here as our principal heating source. And people worry about, the cost of heat pumps, the noise of heat pumps, and all of that. How's the experience been for those poorer people when they switch from coal to heat pumps?
Well, of course, what you have to make sure definitely is that your house is properly thermally insulated, especially in Poland, as we do get
You get cold
longer
winters.
and definitely colder winters than in Britain. But this is the baseline, right? You need to have your house insulated. What as Polish Smog Alert, because we started in Krakow, but later on, we developed into a countrywide organization, and we are advocating for reforms, legislative, financial, organizational, everything connected with air quality on the national level. So one of our actually successes was the establishment of a countrywide subsidy program for actually helping people to switch from coal to something different. So when you look at this program, already 700,000 people actually applied for a subsidy to this
Wow.
program. Yeah, it is a lot. And when you look at this, 60% of these people choose a heat pump, 20% choose a biomass source, and 20% choose gas. More or less, it's like this. But what is also important, this program also provides subsidies to thermal modernization. And so this allows people actually to have a very comprehensive investment, not only change of the heat source, but also reducing heat demand whatsoever. And this actually is becoming, especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the ensuing energy crisis, this is becoming like a priority, because what we need to do, we need to reduce heat demand regardless of what the heat source is. So several years ago, we calculated that Polish households emit 30 million tons of CO2 a year. So if you insulate, and a lot of them are not insulated at all, like one third,
Yeah.
and another one third is insulated like too thinly, right? So if you bring them to, I'm not saying a passive standard, but like a decent insulation standard, and change the heat source, you can actually go down from 30 million tons a year to 5 million tons a year.
Wow.
So this is a huge potential that is still, well, it is being tapped, but just a bit by this program. Yeah.
One of the problems with all of this is the cost. And
Yeah.
everything you said, everyone would agree with you, completely listening. Who wants to live in a city where you're choked, where health is affected, particularly older and young people? But there's a real cost to decarbonize, to pay for insulation, to pay for heat pumps, particularly for the poorest who can't afford it. How has any of this funding come, and what's the situation with trying to get to this goal?
Well, as I said, we look at this transformation, energy transformation of Polish houses in like there are, well, three very important things. So the first one is good legislation. So we need to ban certain types of heating or certain types of appliances to enter the market or to be used in houses. And right now, actually, 90% of Poland is covered by legislation which bans or will ban in near future the use of these smokers, right?
Right.
The second important element is the financial program, and the main
Yeah.
one is the one that I was talking about. It's a governmental program called Cleaner Program, and the third, of course, is basically making people aware why all these things have to happen. And as far as this financial program is concerned, it's been funded by Polish government money, meaning,
Right.
for example, my
From
money.
the state. Yeah.
Yeah, tax money, but also EU funds are being used to finance that. And right now we are talking with already almost a new government, as we are right now experiencing government switch, also to channel some of the ETS money to that program, because it does have, of course, clear benefits for clean air,
Yes.
but it also has benefits for climate, because of course coal and wood burning is not good for climate as well. So that's one thing. But when we talk about benefits and costs, I think we have to look at the flip side. So the other side is that when we make people healthier, there are a lot of savings. And just to continue the story of Krakow, what is the impact of banning coal and wood use? So when we started the campaign, we would experience around 120 smog days a year, which means 4 months a year, the heating season, air was extremely polluted. Right now, this goes down to 30 days, so 1 month a year.
Can you feel that difference? You can see
Yes,
it.
I mean, you can feel it when you walk the streets of Krakow. First of all, you can't see any black smoke coming out of the chimneys, so you can see. But you can also just feel it with your nose, basically, because the air stopped stinking. And when there are those days when air pollution is higher, you can also feel it, that something's wrong. But also what is important, that on those days, it's higher over the norm, but it's not like 8 times the norm. It's only like, let's say, twice the norm. So there's also the difference in the intensity. But what is also important, one of the Krakow's doctors, she has been following the health of children over the 10 years.
I was going to talk about health. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, she was just focusing on asthma cases. And it turned out that the incidence of asthma symptoms decreased from 22%, which is really a lot, like almost 1/4 of Krakow's children had asthma symptoms. So this decreased over the 10 years from 22% to 9%. So this is a huge improvement. And it just shows that it is really worthwhile to do things like that, to improve the air, because it really translates into, it's not an anonymous, I'm sorry I'll say that, but when we hear the statistics, like 300,000 people a year die in the EU because of air pollution, it is anonymous. But when you pinpoint it to one location, it stops being anonymous.
It does. It does. I mean, this is a really interesting thing, because the public it's the hardest thing, and it's also the most powerful thing, like you've said, right? If you can motivate the public to be involved, what has been the scale of kind of public reaction to this? Because obviously there'll be people who are environmentalists, maybe people who are campaigners, and dare I say, people who are slightly more educated, who'll be like, yes, we're backing this. But other people will be thinking, I've done this all my life. I can't afford to do this. I'm worried about the future. Over these 10 years that the campaign's been going, and you've seen this change, what has been the reaction of the public in Krakow? And how have you seen I'm hoping that they've probably been positive, but I'm sure there must have been some resistance, particularly on the financial side of it all.
Yes, overall, it was hugely positive. I mean, people, when they got to know that they live in one of the most polluted cities in the world, but they don't know about it.
Yeah.
Oh, they were angry. They were
Mm.
really, really angry. So we have had a lot of support from Krakow citizens, and without them, it wouldn't be possible. And over the years, we have had a lot of support from Polish citizens, from people living in Poland, because, as I said, this is not only a story of Krakow; it's a story of the whole country, because the whole country has the problem with our pollution. We're the most, along with Bulgaria, the most polluted country in the EU. So we have seen a lot of support and a lot of understanding. But of course, there are people who will, I don't know, who will be afraid to change.
You've got to take those people with you, don't you? You've got to take people with you.
Yes, you need to. This is why these support programs, financial programs, are extremely important. Something like institutionalizing a bit this awareness change. So, for example, in many regions right now, we have a special official who's called an eco advisor. And the role of this official, he's paid by either from external like projects or from municipal sources, but it's a municipal official, local official, and his or her role is actually to talk to people and explain to them what the scale of
Wow.
the problem is.
A proper campaign of PR
Yeah,
and
yeah.
information. Yeah.
Exactly. And also to help them access all these subsidies and different financial schemes, or maybe help them, advise them on choosing a new heating source. So this is also very vital, that this awareness change is not only the role of NGOs, because NGOs are, just a couple of people working dedicated to a certain subject, but this is also the role of authorities on the national, regional, and local level.
So what's next for Polish Smog Alert?
So we still have a long way to go. I've just looked at the recent statistics from our research into what is going on in single-family houses in Poland, and we can see that still 2 million smokers are active in these houses. Yes, Poland still has a quite high levels of PM 2.5, PM 10, so dust emissions are still high. Benzoypyrene emissions, which is another pollutant, carcinogenic pollutant, are the highest in Europe still. They're lower than 10 years ago, but still the highest. So our priority is to remove these smokers from Polish houses through wise financial schemes and awareness raising and legislation, of course. So that the trio that I was talking about, but also in the cities, we do need to tackle NO2 pollution. And this is,
So I was going to say, you're looking
yeah.
at transport as well, yeah?
Yeah, so we are looking at transport. We are working on low emission zones in Krakow, Wrocław, Warsaw. So these are actually the cities that have the largest problem with NO2 pollution. So this is also one of our objectives to go forward with this. Yeah.
Why have you done this? You seem very passionate. I mean, you're very knowledgeable, fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
You so much. And it's always great to hear. We don't hear enough from Eastern Europe, so it's brilliant to hear from you. But why have you been so impassioned by this?
I think this is because I live where I live. So together with the people that we started this campaign 10 years ago, we had this choice. Once you have this knowledge, you can't be kind of oblivious to it, right?
Yeah.
So we face the choice. Either we move out from Krakow, but effectively from Poland, because Krakow was just a very famous example of something that was going on around the country, or we try to change it. So we saw it a bit as a challenge, and we decided to try to change it. And because it started really moving forward very quickly, of course, this always gives you power to continue. However, it's not easy. Sometimes there are really dark days, for the past 2 years, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we've been going backwards. A lot of anti-smog legislative has been lifted. And you could see that, the priority of environmental issues has decreased massively because we are facing the war just behind our doors, basically. So sometimes it's difficult, but when you have the victories, it really gives you power to continue. And when you look at the research that I've mentioned with asthma among kids, or when you can see that actually the death rate from air pollution in Poland is decreasing, this really gives you, power to continue.
Yeah. Well, Anna, I think, this is called the Net Hero podcast. You're definitely a hero, you and your team there.
Thank
your
you.
Colleagues, because to do something like that, to create a movement that changes and moves legislation is brilliant. I really hope you continued success with what you're doing. And if people want to find out, are you on social media? How do they find out about Polish Smog Alert?
Yes, we have an English website, which is polishsmogalert.org, but it just gives basic information about what we do. You can also find our Polish website, Polski Alarm Smogowy.pl, and
we've got a few polls in the UK, so that's good.
And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. X, sorry. X.
Of course, X as it's known. Well, look, best of luck. We would like to hear more from you, so please stay in touch. We'll definitely publicize what you're doing because I think it's brilliant action. So, Anna, thank you so much for joining us from Krakow. And if you've been inspired by what Anna's doing, then check out polishsmogalert.org. Make sure that you start to get in touch with us about things you're doing. We'll catch you soon on the next episode of the Net Hero Podcast.
You've been listening to the Net Hero Podcast with Sumit Bose from Future Net Zero. Visit our platform for all things net zero. And if you or your business is doing great things on the path to net zero and want to be featured on the podcast, email nethero@futurenetzero.com. Follow us on social media. futurenetzero.com. Better business, better planet.